As enhanced, we're seeing more and more customers struggling with fragmented data, multiple reporting tools, disconnected platforms, and growing pressure to get real value from AI. Microsoft Fabric really caught our attention because it brings data analytics and AI together into a single unified platform. We're particularly interested in how Fabric helps organizations move faster from data to insight without needing to bolt together multiple solutions or manage lots of moving parts. Today is very much about practical understanding, what Fabric is, where it fits, and how it can be used in the real world. With that, I'm delighted to hand you over to Julius, who will walk you through the platform and share his expertise. Over to you, Julius.
Thank you so much, Johnny. So yeah, just before we get started, guys, a bit of an agenda for today's session. I'll give you a little introduction about myself, where I got where I am today, and why I'm presenting today. I'll talk you through what we're going to call it, the business intelligence journey. So when we were planning this, we didn't want this to be a purely technical talk where we speak for 30 minutes on medallion architecture or notebooks. We wanted to actually give you something relatable, something that we see pretty much every company go through, and something, you're probably going through yourself. So we're going to talk about Fabric in terms of how it fits into that journey and how it can help you. And then we'll actually go through what Fabric is, go through some of the technical details around it, and also go through some demonstrations as well, or some demo videos. Then why Fabric? There are potentially other solutions available to you as well, but we'll discuss why we think Fabric is the right choice. And then we'll have that Q&A piece that Johnny just mentioned. So if you have any immediate questions relating to Fabric, hopefully I can help answer those. And then finally, we'll move on to next steps so that you know how you can progress this further if you are interested. So just a little bit about me. I've been in basically the Microsoft ecosystem my whole career. I started off as a junior Excel developer, and then I realized I really enjoyed data analysis and visualization and even the design element of that. So I really got into Power BI, and I spent quite a few years just doing Power BI development and eventually became a development lead there. But as I was doing that, I became very interested in data structure and dimensional modeling, and even got into some of the infrastructure within SQL and Azure. And then Microsoft decided to release Microsoft Fabric. So that was kind of a perfect moment for me to transition into Microsoft Fabric. So at the moment, I spend most of my time there helping architect solutions for customers, advising them on governance and security, and even doing some, getting into the weeds of things in terms of data warehousing, but ultimately trying to enable AI for customers. So my experience covers a mixture of consultancy, building bespoke solutions, managing internal data platforms, as well as managing developers internally as well. So, well, that's probably enough about me, but we can now move on to Fabric. So as mentioned, we wanted to explain Fabric through the lens of the business intelligence journey. And as we were building out this slide, we realized that my career timeline actually aligns perfectly to the business intelligence journey. And I quite like that narrative because it kind of shows that it's real. So the 4 stages of the business intelligence journey we pretty much always see. First, Excel development or kind of static development. We'll get on to the specifics of each of these as well in a slide. But first one being Excel or static. And then second, you might move on to something a bit more interactive, such as Power BI or Tableau. And then the third step is centralizing that data somewhere. So that's where Fabric is going to come into play. And what that does is that enables you to get to stage 4, which is where everyone wants to get to at the moment, which is all about building an AI enterprise and enabling AI. So I spend most of my time helping companies get to that 4th stage. But we help companies no matter whichever stage you're at. So drilling into those different stages, stage 1, your sort of localized reporting, Excel, maybe you're doing some reporting within your line of business applications. Thinking about an example or potential use case, you could have a pharmaceutical company. Maybe they're thinking about releasing a new drug to market, and so they want to assess the market. They want to analyze other companies and other products that make up the market and maybe buy how much. Maybe want to analyze what the cost and the products and the usage of those potential drugs are. And they want all that information because they want to drive their plan, their sales strategy, their marketing strategy. And they could be in a situation where they need to download monthly publicly available data. Maybe they want to add some additional data sets as well around demographics or something else. So what they would normally do is they'd probably start quite quickly. They start downloading that data into Excel files, maybe building Excel reports, creating pivot tables, doing calculations on that data. You can actually get up and running pretty quickly on something like that, but it's incredibly manual and it takes a huge amount of time. So you end up with quite a lot of problems, as you can see on the cons list on the right-hand side. You end up with duplicate reports. You're not really able to drill down very well. You lack that visualization. You don't really understand the lineage of your data, so you don't really trust it as well. There's a lot of manual intervention that goes on, a lot of human error involved. You lack that governance and that collaboration and that security, and it just runs away a little bit. So this stage can work well for teams, but it doesn't work for enterprises. And so that's what drives the first move to something a bit more dynamic like Power BI, with the goal of being self-serve. So that pharmaceutical company, maybe they adopt Power BI, and you gain a lot of pros, and your cons decrease as well. So that pharmaceutical company, they could be using Power Query now to combine some of those files together. They're able to integrate data from different sources a lot more easily. They can make use of dimensional modeling, such as a star schema within Power BI, and the DAX engine as well to do some complicated calculations. So through that, they've saved a huge amount of time through automating a lot of those manual processes. Their visualization is a lot better. It's on a SaaS platform as well, so the security and the governance is all in place, and they could have a strategy to manage that now. So you've made a huge leap in productivity. But what we see is you kind of end up at the same stage you were at stage one. You still end up with, duplicate business logic across all these Power BI reports. Your data isn't AI ready. And you're stuck wondering why this figure isn't matching in this report. This figure isn't matching the one in another report. And you still kind of crave that single source of truth. And that's where the Unified Data Foundation of Microsoft Fabric can help you out. So again, continuing with that narrative of the pharmaceutical company, maybe they can make use of the data they already have. They can migrate that into Fabric. They can maybe even shortcut that data using a SharePoint shortcut in Fabric. It's also a lot easier to load in the data from other systems or possibly other files. And maybe they're starting to build out a bit of a layered architecture, which is, you've probably heard of medallion architecture, which is what that's all about increasing data quality gradually. They maybe have now a single source of truth because they've built a data warehouse within Microsoft Fabric or some sort of dimensional model there. And they have multiple reports running off that centralized data warehouse. So what you'll notice is that on the right-hand side, the pros and cons have actually completely flipped from when we were at Excel development or the Excel stage. But now you can actually prepare your data for AI. Now, the one thing that I do want to mention that isn't shown on this slide is cost. So cost isn't on a pros or con here because it could be looked at from two different perspectives. Because you could look at it from a development perspective, but you could also look at it from that hidden operational cost of running all those manual processes monthly, maybe. So what Fabric helps to do is it helps remove all of that hidden cost. Manually comparing files, validating files, cleaning files. So that's just why cost isn't on the list here. And also, it's worth saying that different domains within your business might be at different stages as well. And again, that is where Fabric can help you because it can consolidate and conform data from those different business domains into Fabric in a governed way as well. But why do we go through those stages? Well, we do it all to enable AI. So now that you have your centralized data warehouse or lakehouse, whatever it is within inside Fabric, you can now drive AI both within Fabric and outside of Fabric. So maybe that pharmaceutical company, they could be building reports using Copilot now. They could be writing T-SQL code or Python in notebooks using Copilot too. They could be running data agents, and they could be using those data agents within Copilot Studio, maybe Foundry. So an example of that is that a clinician could now go into Microsoft Teams, query an agent, maybe ask it a question about the market or a competitor, and get an immediate answer. And then that agent might be able to then run some sort of automated task, maybe a Power Automate flow or something like that off the back of that as well. So you're improving efficiency across the whole business, hence why speed and skills have now moved into the pros area. Now, a couple of things just to say about AI. It can obviously do a lot. I'm sure we've all seen that as of recent years. But one thing it can't do is it can't replace your data, and it's only as good as your data. And one thing that we see a lot of is companies are really in a rush to get to this fourth stage. And where they fall down is not going through stage 3. They don't go through that process of unifying their data, because you really can't get to stage 4 without going through stage 3. So that is where Fabric fits into your journey, all the way from kind of descriptive static reporting within Excel to that kind of prescriptive AI reporting at stage 4. So we've spoken about how Fabric fits into that journey, but what actually is Fabric? Now, yeah, this slideshow probably wouldn't be complete without a stolen slide from Microsoft, but Fabric can be quite overwhelming. Even I sometimes find it a little bit overwhelming, but just because it has all of these things and it has all these fancy toys, it doesn't mean you have to use them all. It's about knowing which ones work for you. So underpinning Fabric, we have three different items. We have OneLake, which is kind of, a bit of a poster boy for Fabric, but OneLake can be, or is, your unified repository to store all of your data. It can store multiple different types of data, so your unstructured, semi-structured, and structured. All of the different workflows on top of Fabric can communicate via OneLake, and that means that your data doesn't move or have to go anywhere, and so you reduce a huge amount of the duplication of data that you'll see out if you don't have Fabric in place. And so again, you're sort of building up that single source of truth. AI, or Copilot, is pretty much everywhere within Fabric, so it can help you with code, it can help you with analysis and BI reporting. It can also help you with a bit of governance as well, so discovery of items, very similar to the way 365 Copilot works on your desktop if you have that. Then the third pillar is the security and governance. Obviously, it works off Entra ID. If you have Power BI in place, you've still got your workspaces, your security groups, your admin controls. You also have something called the OneLake catalog, which for me, I think has been a big improvement on security, on governance, because it allows you to assess the lineage of your items and also look at who has access to what. But obviously, as well, in terms of security and governance, you do have Purview. So you do have that option to embed your sensitivity labels and therefore enforce your data loss prevention policies as well within Microsoft Fabric. But in terms of building solutions, we can look at Data Factory. So Data Factory can help you load, mainly batch load data into Fabric. It can help you orchestrate those end-to-end data processes that involve transforming and cleaning your data and moving it through that layered architecture. We have analytics. Analytics it's basically Synapse, Azure Synapse, if you've heard of it. So that covers a mixture of data engineering, data science, and data warehousing. So if we look at data engineering, that can involve writing Python code in notebooks. It doesn't have to be Python code as well. There's multiple coding languages you can use. Again, the notebooks can be used in a similar way Data Factory can be used. So it can be used to move data, transform data, automate tasks. You have SQL data warehousing. So that's, your familiar data warehousing, really, where you can write, stored procedures and do your dimensional modeling, create your facts and dimensions. We have machine learning models out the box. It's just sort of classification and regression, the standard models. But thanks to the notebooks, you can also make use of data science libraries to create your own machine learning models as well. There's databases. These are basically your Azure SQL databases that have moved into Fabric. Microsoft kind of want to, or see this as like, well, you may as well have both your transactional data from your business systems and your analytical data all here within Fabric in OneLake. We have Synapse Real-Time Analytics. So this is, less commonly seen, but this is used to load your streaming data in. It's done in KQL or Custo Query language, which is, similar in many ways to SQL, but there's some nuances to it. But the thing I like about real-time intelligence is the activator workflow. And so the activator workflow, essentially what that does is that can monitor your Fabric items. So for example, you could be monitoring measures or KPIs within your reports. And then activator can then trigger actions based on certain conditions, e.g. if that metric or KPI hits a certain value, it can trigger a Power Automate flow to be run. So activator is a really useful tool within Microsoft Fabric. Fabric IQ, this is a relatively new component of Fabric. Now this is kind of where how Fabric are packaging up the AI solutions here. Now as part of Microsoft's wider IQ initiative, they have IQ across Foundry and other elements, but it includes things like your data agents and ontology. Ontology is basically a business semantic layer. It's to help your AI understand, your data better or read your data better by giving it the business context. Because at the minute, there's nothing really in place to help the AI understand the way the business actually works and the connections between the different domains and tables. So yeah, that allows your organizations, or your applications across your organization for AI to operate from the same source of meaning. So you can think of it as a solution to that kind of fragmented and duplicated business logic. And then finally, Power BI, possibly my personal favorite. Hopefully you've all heard of it, where you can do your reporting and insights on top of all that data in OneLake. So just a few recorded demos here to show you how moving to Fabric could enable the business. So if we think about a key business driver, which could be efficiency. So you want to save time, you want to automate tasks, you want to identify inefficiencies, or because you want to reduce operating costs. Here, I've created a data pipeline, and that data pipeline can move my data through my layered architecture, and it also transforms that data along the way. I can automate that. I can schedule it to run every hour. I can send notifications to myself when that fails. And so instead of spending all that time manually cleaning and collecting that data, I can automate it and I can spend more time in my Power BI reports, focusing on what matters, that reporting and that analysis, helping me make decisions faster and helping me improve productivity as well. Another one is centralizing your data. So obviously we don't want those sort of data silos. We want to become data driven. We want that single source of truth. So here I'm in a lakehouse. I'm basically looking at different types of data in different structures as well. And so that data is all sitting in OneLake, and that comes from different data sources. I can then look at my gold layer, which is the final layer in the data layered architecture. And I can see my semantic model running off my gold layer, and I can see the lineage of those different reports running off that gold layer. So here I'm creating a bit of a single source of truth. And one thing I actually missed out because I was too busy talking was that here in Fabric, you also get endorsement. And so that helps you build up this sort of trust. You can promote items that have been tested, that have been, governance controls have been put on those, so that your organization knows that is my single source of truth, that is my master data, I can trust that. And then finally, another key business driver is obviously AI enablement. So here I'm going to just demonstrate a few ways AI or Copilot can help you within Fabric. So the first one is just chatting to Copilot within a Power BI report. So you can query the data from an analytical perspective, and that can also help you visualize the data as well. Ignore my terrible spelling in this video, But here, yeah, you can see I asked it an analytical question. It came back, it presented me with a visual. I can then go and explore that visual as well. So if I'm familiar with the semantic model, I can, play around with the answer and drill in a little bit deeper. Here, I'm going to demonstrate setting up a verified answer. So this is all part of preparing our data for AI. So you might have some really commonly asked questions across the business, and you can set up verified answers on different visuals within Power BI so that when somebody asks that common question using Copilot, they get that visual as a response. So here you can see it matched it as a verified answer. Here, this is a demonstration of a data agent within Fabric. So the difference between a data agent and Copilot chat within a Power BI report is that a data agent can run off multiple data items within your Fabric estate. So here I've got 2 semantic models in there, but you could run it off a whole data warehouse or even a lake house. And when you query it, the data agent can know which source or which semantic model or lake house it came from. But you can also open it up to see how it got to that answer, so you can validate that it's telling you the truth. And then finally, we have Copilot across our entire Fabric estate. So this is kind of similar to your M365 Copilot on desktop. And again, I'm asking it a verified question here, and you'll see in a second that it pulls through a verified visual that I've set up as well in terms of preparing my data for AI. So that Copilot chat across the whole of Fabric can be used both from a governance perspective and from an analytical perspective. So in summary, we've enabled the business using data by correctly implementing Fabric, which is ultimately going to help give you a competitive advantage. So why Microsoft Fabric? Now, first one I was going to say is that it's inside the Microsoft ecosystem. Now, some people may think that's a good thing or a bad thing, but for me, in terms of the integration that brings, with Copilot, Teams, data sources like Dynamics, Azure, even the Power Platform, it makes everything so much easier, and that can really help speed up development. It is a complete analytics platform. Again, for me as a developer, when I was just in Power BI, I was kind of restricted in terms of the tools that I had to solve different problems, and bringing all of these items within Fabric it empowered me massively, because instead of relying on other systems and possibly relying on multiple workflows to communicate, everything can be done collaboratively here within Fabric. Now, I do think it is built for everyone. There is full code flexibility, but there are really intuitive low code options as well. So I think Fabric empowers pretty much every skill level. Obviously, it's heavily backed by Microsoft as well, with a push towards data and AI. So it's very scalable and future ready. The licensing is more of an art than a science in terms of getting the right capacity, but it is efficient in the sense that it all comes under one hood. You're not paying for different licensing for all the different workflows. And then security and governance, obviously, it works with Entra and it's underpinned by Purview as well.